Welcome to Basta Stories, where real-life horror and true ghost stories come to life, from haunted forests to chilling encounters with the darkest parts of human nature. Each episode dives into the terrifying and unexplained. These aren't just stories, they're warnings. So turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and ask yourself, are you really alone?
The forest stretched before us, a labyrinth of shadows and whispers, promising freedom, but hiding a terror we couldn't foresee. I was barely 19, a drama student with a penchant for chaos, the theater kid who thrived on the thrill of the stage and the raw energy of the outdoors. My mates, Cheggers, Brody, Sammy, and Pal, were my tribe, bound by a shared love for escaping the mundane. Cheggers, the engineering nerd with a sharp mind and an even sharper tongue, always took the wheel. His reliable car, our chariot to the wild. Brody, buried in physics textbooks, had a quiet intensity that matched his calculations. Sammy, the English lit dreamer, could spin a tale as easily as he'd quote Shakespeare. And Pal, the rugby lad studying sports science, was a force of nature. His broad shoulders and wild energy masking a need for solitude we didn't fully grasp back then. We'd been hooked on camping since our Duke of Edinburgh days in school. Those grueling wilderness challenges that taught us to survive with nothing but a map and sheer grit. Milo, one of our original crew, had taken it to heart and joined the army, but the rest of us kept the tradition alive, piling into Cheggers' car every chance we got. Friday nights meant freedom. Tents, beers, disposable barbecues, and enough meat to feed a village. We'd drive to the moors, far from the city's hum, where the air was thick with the scent of earth and the promise of untamed nights. That summer, back for our second-year uni break, we planned 7 nights in our secret haven, a secluded forest we'd claimed a year ago. It was our sanctuary, untouched by others, or so we thought. We'd built a fire pit from bricks, a testament to our claim, its blackened stones holding the ghosts of past bonfires. The forest was our stage, where we shed the masks of polite society and let loose in the mud and morning dew, our laughter echoing through the trees. But that Saturday morning, as we crawled from our tents, heads throbbing from last night's beers, something felt wrong, like the air itself held its breath. Our sanctuary had been breached. In the clearing next to ours, an old hippie couple was pitching a tent, their presence a violation of our private world. Their movements were slow, deliberate, as if they belonged here as much as we did. We exchanged glances, hung over, and confused. But curiosity won out. Pal, usually the loudest, was silent, his eyes narrowing before he muttered something and wandered off toward the trees. Cheggers, ever the diplomat, told us to play nice, and we approached, offering to help set up their camp. We were pretentious teens, fancying ourselves worldly, imagining these old hippies might share stories of the 60s, maybe even some weed. The scent of smoke clung to them, a faint promise of something illicit. And we were young enough to think it'd be a lark to bond with them over a joint. The woman, in her 60s, was thin as a reed, her frizzy hair a wild halo around a gaunt face. Her smile was manic, too wide, her eyes magnified by thick, oversized glasses that gave her an almost comical appearance, yet there was something unsettling in their gleam, like she was watching us too closely. The man was a giant, built like a fortress, his massive beard a tangled forest of gray and brown. He wore a faded green army jacket, the kind every lad in the 2000s seemed to own, but it hung awkwardly on his aged frame. His hat was a spectacle, covered in badges, pins, fishing flies, a chaotic collage that screamed eccentricity. As I watched him hammer a tent peg, a memory flickered, sharp and sudden, like a blade cutting through the fog of my hangover. "Hey, are you Mr. Henroden?" I blurted out. "You used to be an art teacher." He paused, smoothed his beard, and nodded, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my skin prickle. It was him, my favorite teacher from years 7 to 10, the one who'd let us paint whatever we wanted. No rules, no limits. But he'd vanished halfway through my GCSEs, replaced by a tyrant who crushed creativity. Seeing him here, in this remote forest, felt like stumbling into a dream or a nightmare. Cheggers and Sammy lit up, recognizing him from their early art classes, their excitement filling the air with nostalgia. Brody, who'd never had him, nodded vaguely, caught up in the group's energy. Pal was still gone, his absence a quiet void we barely noticed in our eagerness to reconnect with Henroden. But something in the way he watched us, his smile too sharp, planted a seed of unease deep in my gut. We helped them set up, chatting about how they'd found our spot, parked near Cheggers' car, and used our fire pit before. They claimed to be regulars, but our pit showed no signs of recent use. No ash, no stray twigs. It didn't add up. But we were too hungover, too trusting, to question it. Lunch was shared, their stories of past adventures weaving a spell over us. But I noticed they brought nothing to the table. No food, no drink, just their presence as the sun dipped low, painting the forest in hues of gold and shadow. I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd invited something dangerous into our haven. The forest, once our refuge, now felt like a trap, its silence hiding secrets we were too young to see. The moment Henroden's name left my lips, the forest seemed to tighten around us, as if the trees themselves leaned in to listen. His confirmation hit like a jolt, stirring memories of paint-splattered classrooms and his easy laugh. But the man before me was different, harder, older, his eyes carrying a weight that hadn't been there in school. Sainsbury, his partner, stood beside him, her manic grin unwavering, her glasses catching the fading light like twin moons. She called herself Sainsbury, like the supermarket, and we laughed, thinking it a quirky joke. Their bags from the store scattered around their half-pitched tent. But her laughter was too sharp, too quick, like a blade slicing through the air, and it sent a shiver down my spine. We were idiots, 19 and full of ourselves, believing old people, especially a beloved teacher, could do no wrong. How wrong we were, how blind to the shadows lurking behind their smiles. Henroden's stories flowed as we helped with their tent, tales of his teaching days that made Cheggers and Sammy lean in, their faces lit with recognition. He spoke of art projects we'd forgotten, of moments when he'd praised our sloppy sketches. His voice warm, but edged with something I couldn't place. Sainsbury chimed in sparingly, her comments brief, her eyes darting between us like a predator sizing up prey. The forest watched, its silence heavy, the rustle of leaves sounding like whispers of warning we ignored. We asked how they'd found our spot, a place we'd kept secret for a year, its isolation our pride. Henroden said they'd been here many times, grateful for our fire pit. But his words rang hollow. Our pit was pristine, untouched, except by us. And I felt a flicker of doubt, quickly buried under the excitement of reconnecting with a figure from our past. Pal's absence nagged at me, though his sudden disappearance into the woods wasn't unusual. But it felt off, like a missing piece in a puzzle we didn't yet see. We shared our lunch, their lack of contribution unnoticed in our eagerness to play the gracious hosts. Cheggers led the conversation, his engineering logic grounding us, while Brody and Sammy added their own memories of Henroden's classes. I watched him closely, trying to reconcile the man before me with the teacher who'd shaped my love for art. His beard hid much of his face, but his eyes were sharp, calculating, not the warm gaze I remembered. Sainsbury's presence was quieter, but no less unsettling. Her thin frame moving with a nervous energy, her smile never reaching those magnified eyes. The air grew thicker, the forest's shadows lengthening, as if the day itself sensed the danger we couldn't. We parted ways for a hike, the group buzzing with nostalgia. But Pal's absence lingered like a ghost. He often vanished like this, needing solitude in ways we didn't understand. Maybe neurodivergent. Maybe just Pal being Pal. We didn't worry. Not yet. Assuming he'd reappear by dusk, his rugby-built frame crashing through the underbrush with a grin. The hike took us deep into the forest, the trees towering above, their branches weaving a canopy that filtered the sunlight into dappled patterns. We laughed, swapped stories, and planned the night ahead. More beers, more steaks, maybe some music from Brody's battered stereo. The forest felt alive, its sounds familiar, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a bird, the crunch of our boots on the path. But there was something else, a faint undercurrent of unease, like eyes watching from the shadows. I pushed it down, telling myself it was just the hangover. But the forest knew something we didn't. Its silence, a warning we were too young to heed. When we returned, Henroden and Sainsbury were waiting, their tent fully pitched, their presence more entrenched than before. The fire pit glowed with fresh flames, and we settled in, the night promising camaraderie. Brody's stereo played soft rock. The beers flowed, and the scent of sizzling steaks filled the air. Henroden spun more tales of the swinging 60s, his army days, his life on the road with Sainsbury. She nodded along, her vegan quips light but pointed, teasing our meat-heavy feast without malice. Yet they offered nothing, no food, no drink, just stories that drew us in like moths to a flame. As the sun sank, painting the sky in streaks of crimson, Henroden's tone shifted, his stories growing darker, more personal. He spoke of freedom, of breaking rules, of living without restraint. Sainsbury's eyes gleamed, her smile twitching as if she knew something we didn't. The fire crackled, its light casting their faces in flickering shadows, and I felt it again. That chill, that sense of being watched, not just by them, but by the forest itself. I clung to the hope of weed, a naive wish for a shared joint to loosen the night. But when Henroden reached into his pocket, pulling out baggies, my stomach twisted. This wasn't just weed. There were LSD tabs, pills, a massive bag of mushrooms, too neatly packed, too professional for a casual afternoon pick. The forest closed in, its darkness a living thing, and I realized we'd invited monsters into our sanctuary, their smiles hiding a hunger we couldn't yet name. The night deepened, and with it came a creeping dread, as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for us to see the truth. Brody and Sammy had passed out in their tents, their snores a distant hum beneath the crackle of the fire. Pal was still gone, his absence now a weight pressing on my chest. Cheggers, ever the optimist, texted him with spotty reception, muttering that Pal would be fine, but his eyes betrayed worry. I tried to focus on Henroden, hoping for the weed we'd smelled on him, but his offerings were far more sinister. He held up the baggies, his beard framing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. And I felt the air shift, heavy with a threat I couldn't name. The mushrooms, he claimed, were picked that afternoon, but I knew better. I'd dabbled enough to know drying shrooms took days, not hours, and these were meticulously prepared, sealed in bags that spoke of intent, not impulse. Cheggers, eager for a joint, had to coax Henroden to share, as if the old man resented parting with even a pinch. But with me, they were relentless, pushing LSD tabs, then pills, their voices soft but insistent, like a chant weaving through the firelight. I refused, my gut screaming that something was wrong. Their smiles were masks, their eyes glinting with a hunger that made my skin crawl. The forest echoing their intent with every rustle of leaves. I took a few puffs of the joint to appease Cheggers, the smoke curling in my lungs. But even that felt tainted, heavy with an edge I couldn't place. Then, without warning, they started brewing tea, our kettle, our stove, their mushrooms. A handful went into the boiling water, the steam rising like a specter in the night. I asked if the shrooms were safe, my voice trembling despite the beer and weed dulling my senses. Henroden's casual, "I guess so," sent a chill through me, sharp and sobering. Cutting through the haze, the fire's glow seemed to dim, the forest's shadows stretching toward us, as if drawn by the poison in their words. Cheggers, reckless and curious, snatched a cup before they could stop him, downing it in one gulp. I watched, heart pounding, as his eyes widened, his steps faltering. Within minutes, he was wandering the woods, muttering about gnomes, his laughter eerie against the silence of the trees. Panic clawed at me. Brody and Sammy were out cold. Pal was God knows where, and Cheggers was lost to hallucinations, stumbling through the dark. I was alone, surrounded by these strangers who wore familiar faces, but felt like predators. Henroden's voice was a low hum, urging me to drink, to let go, to join them in their world, while Sainsbury's eyes bored into me, her smile a twisted promise of something unspeakable. They pressed the mug closer, their hands brushing mine, their insistence growing sharper. I faked a sip, lips sealed, praising the taste to mask my fear. The weed's haze was lifting, thanks to a bout of vomiting into a pile of leaves, my body rejecting their poison. Sainsbury approached, her thin arm snaking around my shoulders, guiding me back to the fire. Her touch was cold, her fingers bony, and I felt trapped. The forest's darkness pressing in from all sides. The night was no longer ours. It belonged to them, to their secrets, to the terror they'd brought into our haven. I glanced at Cheggers, now dancing through the trees, chasing phantoms, his laughter a haunting echo. My heart raced, torn between protecting my friends and saving myself from whatever game Henroden and Sainsbury were playing. Their stories shifted. Henroden's voice dropping to a hypnotic drone. Speaking of communes, free love, a world without boundaries. Sainsbury nodded, her glasses glinting, her silence more threatening than words. The fire cast their shadows long and twisted, like demons dancing across the clearing, and I felt the forest watching, its silence a scream we couldn't hear. They offered another pill, their hands lingering too long, their eyes too eager. I refused again, my voice sharp, but they only smiled, as if my resistance was part of their plan. The joint I'd smoked was hitting harder now, my vision blurring, colors bleeding into the night. Was it laced? The thought hit like a hammer, my paranoia spiking as their faces seemed to shift. Henroden's beard a cavern hiding something monstrous, Sainsbury's smile a jagged tear. The forest was alive, its branches clawing at the sky, its shadows whispering of betrayal, of danger we'd invited in our naivety. I stumbled back, heart pounding, as their hands reached for me, their voices a siren call, promising release if I'd just give in. But I wouldn't. I couldn't. The night had turned, and I was caught in its jaws, praying Pal would return before it was too late. The forest was no longer a refuge. It was a cage, its shadows coiling around us, tightening with every word Henroden spoke. My head spun, the weed's haze twisting my thoughts. But the fear was sharp, cutting through the fog. Cheggers was lost in the woods, his laughter a distant, manic echo, chasing gnomes that existed only in his mind. Brody and Sammy lay unconscious in their tents, oblivious to the danger creeping closer. Pal was still missing, his absence a gaping wound in our group. I was alone, pinned by Henroden's gaze, his voice a low chant urging me to drink the mushroom tea, to let go, to surrender. Sainsbury's hands were on me, her fingers like ice, her smile a mask hiding something vile. And I felt the forest itself turn against us, its silence a scream of warning. I faked another sip, my lips brushing the mug, my stomach churning as I pretended to savor it. Vomiting had cleared my head just enough to see through their game, but not enough to escape the dread pooling in my chest. Their touches grew bolder. Henroden's hands on my shoulders, Sainsbury's fingers grazing my arm, their movements deliberate, invasive. The firelight flickered, casting their faces in grotesque relief. Henroden's beard a nest of shadows, Sainsbury's eyes gleaming like a predator's behind her glasses. He spoke of the 60s, of free love, of shedding inhibitions, his words dripping with a sickening promise. He urged me to take off my clothes, to join them in their twisted vision of freedom. I refused, my voice trembling but firm, and their smiles faltered, replaced by something darker, hungrier. They pressed a pill toward my lips. I spat it out, shouting, my voice swallowed by the forest's oppressive silence. Cheggers' joyful whoop cut through the night. Then a thud. He'd collapsed somewhere in the trees. And I was alone with these monsters, their hands clawing at my resolve, their eyes promising horrors I couldn't imagine. The weed was laced. It had to be. My vision warped, colors bleeding, Henroden's face twisting into something demonic, his beard a writhing mass hiding a leering grin. Sainsbury's laughter was a cackle, her form shifting into a harpy-like figure. The forest alive with shadowy figures circling us, their whispers taunting, urging me to give in. I scrambled back, my heart a drum beat in my chest, my hands shaking as I blinked to clear the hallucinations. The night was a living thing, its darkness a weight crushing my lungs, the trees leaning in as if to witness my fall. Henroden's voice grew louder, insisting everything would be better if I surrendered. His hands fumbling with his clothes, exposing himself in a way that turned my stomach. At 19, I'd seen plenty. But this was a violation, a betrayal of trust, a teacher turned predator. I shouted again, my voice raw, pushing against their hands, their words, their sickening intent. The forest seemed to pulse with their malice, its shadows dancing to their rhythm. Then, a roar tore through the night, primal and furious, like a beast unleashed from the depths of the woods. I froze, thinking Bigfoot, werewolf, anything but reality. But it was Pal, charging through the trees, a massive branch in his hands, his eyes blazing with rage. He bellowed at Henroden to get off me, his voice a thunderclap that shattered the night's spell. He swung the branch, and their tent collapsed in a single, crushing blow, canvas and poles crumpling like their facade of friendliness. Henroden scrambled back, dragging Sainsbury with him, their faces pale in the firelight, their confidence gone. Pal was a force, his rugby strength unleashed, his branch a weapon of righteous fury. He grabbed me, pressing a can of Coke to my lips, the cold liquid and sugar shocking my system, pulling me back from the edge. He slapped my cheeks lightly, grounding me, his voice steady. Stay with me. The forest seemed to retreat, its shadows recoiling from Pal's presence, as if even the trees feared his wrath. I joined him, screaming at Henroden, who fumbled to pull up his pants, his hat askew, badges glinting like mocking eyes. Sainsbury clung to him, her manic smile gone, replaced by fear. Pal advanced, branch raised, his voice a growl as he confronted them, words lost in the haze of my panic, but sharp with accusation. The night was chaos, my head spinning, heart pounding. The fire's glow a fading anchor in a world turned upside down. Pal was our savior, a titan against the darkness, and I clung to that truth as the forest watched, its silence now a witness to our escape from their grasp. As dawn broke, the forest exhaled, its shadows retreating, but the scars of the night lingered, etched into my soul like a wound that would never heal. I woke in my tent, the sun's first rays piercing the canvas, my body heavy with the weight of what had happened, crawling out. I faced Sammy and Brody, their faces pale and hungover, oblivious to the terror that had unfolded. Pal sat by the fire pit, fresh-faced, untouched by the night's poison, his eyes steady, but haunted. He'd been sober, our unexpected guardian, and he recounted how he'd chased Henroden and Sainsbury into the woods, ensuring they fled to their car and left our haven for good. The memory of their faces, Henroden's twisted grin, Sainsbury's predatory stare, flashed in my mind, and I shuddered. The forest's silence, now a reminder of how close we'd come to something unspeakable. Panic hit first, my mind racing with fear that Pal had forced them to drive drunk or high. But clarity returned like a cold wave. Henroden hadn't touched the weed, the beer, the tea. His sobriety was a calculated choice. His focus on getting me wasted a deliberate act. The realization was a knife, cutting through the last of my naivety, revealing the predator beneath the teacher's mask. Cheggers emerged, vomiting into the underbrush, his face ashen from the shrooms. We gathered around the fire pit, coffee in hand, and Pal laid it all bare. He'd stormed off when we recognized Henroden, his rage rooted in a buried trauma from year 7. A slow developer, Pal had been in special classes, including a farm trip chaperoned by Henroden every night. The teacher had invaded his showers, making creepy remarks that followed him back to school. Pal had kept it secret, thinking it wasn't enough to report. But we gently chastised him, our hearts heavy with what he'd endured. The forest seemed to listen, its trees standing as silent witnesses to a truth we'd been too blind to see. Pal's hike had been to cool his fury, but he'd heard rumors, later verified by me, that Henroden left our school amid accusations of inappropriate behavior, though nothing was proven in court. The thought of him still out there, an old man now, filled me with a rage that burned hotter than the fire before us, a wish for his suffering as sharp as the terror he'd inflicted. Sainsbury remained a mystery, her name a riddle we couldn't solve, her role in their twisted game unclear. I was angry at Pal for leaving us with a man he suspected, but we were adults, barely, and he'd saved us in the end. That night changed us. The forest no longer a haven, but a place of betrayal, where trust was shattered and innocence lost. Our camping trips dwindled, the joy tainted by the memory of Henroden's hands, Sainsbury's eyes, the laced weed that turned the forest into a nightmare. I still see them in my dreams, their faces morphing into monsters, the forest closing in, a reminder that evil can wear the face of someone you once trusted. The darkness in that cave wasn't just absence of light. It was alive, pulsing with secrets that clawed at my mind, making me question if we'd ever truly escaped its grasp. In the early 2010s, Sean and I were bound by a shared hunger for the wild, a need to escape the suffocating grind of city life. As native Californians, the Sierra Nevada was our cathedral, its towering pines, jagged cliffs, and endless trails a refuge where we could breathe freely. We'd pitch tents near Mount Whitney's rugged slopes, or wander the serene paths around Lake Tahoe. But our curiosity always pulled us deeper, to corners of the range where civilization's fingerprints faded. One trip, though, carved a scar in my memory, not for the beauty we sought, but for the terror that found us instead. We chose a site so isolated it felt like stepping into a world untouched by time. No fire pits marred the earth. No discarded cans or wrappers betrayed prior visitors. The pristine solitude was intoxicating, a blank canvas for our passions. I was a journaling zealot, my notebooks filled with florid prose about the mountain's majesty, shared on LiveJournal or Tumblr. My writing was grandiose, often embarrassingly so, but it captured the raw pulse of those escapes, each word a snapshot of my love for the wild. I regret not archiving more. Those entries were a testament to a simpler time. Sean, my opposite yet perfect complement, lived through his camera. His Nikon was an extension of his soul, capturing the Sierra's untamed spirit for online contests. Suggest a smartphone camera, and he'd unleash a sermon on why true photography demanded heft, precision, and soul, never a flimsy device. This spot was a revelation, absent from every Sierra Nevada forum we haunted. It promised exclusivity, a secret only we'd claim. We set up camp beneath a grove of ancient pines, their branches swaying like whispered secrets in the breeze. The air carried the sharp tang of resin, mingling with the smoky aroma of burgers grilling on our stove. As dusk settled, the sky unfurled a tapestry of stars, each pinprick of light, a promise of adventure. We spoke of past trips, of eagles soaring and trails conquered, our laughter echoing softly against the trees. Sleep came easily that night, lulled by the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant gurgle of a nearby river. We woke refreshed, the morning sun casting golden rays through the canopy, igniting our eagerness to explore. This was our ritual, Sean with his lens, me with my pen, two souls chasing the wild's fleeting moments, unaware that the wild was watching us back. As I crossed the cave's threshold, a chill sank into my bones, like the mountain itself exhaled a warning to turn back, its darkness hiding truths too sinister to face. Following the river's winding path, we trekked upstream through rocky outcrops, the Sierra Nevada's raw beauty unfolding around us. The water shimmered under the sun, its surface a mirror for the towering peaks above. Sean paused to frame a golden eagle, its wings slicing through the crisp air, a fleeting emblem of freedom. Further on, a mountain lion prowled distant boulders on another slope, far enough to admire, its lithe form a reminder of the wild's untamed pulse. We settled for lunch beneath a looming cliff, its shade a cool sanctuary from the sun's glare. I scribbled in my journal, capturing the interplay of light on stone, the heavy scent of pine saturating the air, while Sean roamed with his camera, his focus unbreakable, his sudden shout, brimming with excitement, shattered my reverie. He'd found a cave, a jagged gash in the mountainside, its mouth yawning like a wound in the earth. An inexplicable unease gripped me, a primal instinct whispering of hidden dangers. I urged we move on. These ranges teemed with black bears and mountain lions, and that dark maw could be a lair. But Sean's enthusiasm was unshakable, his desire to photograph the entrance overriding caution. Armed with bear spray and sidearms, we deemed it safe enough to venture inside. The darkness engulfed us instantly, a thick, oppressive void that felt alive, pressing against our skin like a cold, damp shroud. Outside, sunlight blazed, but within, it was an abyss, muffling every sound except our shallow breaths and the faint drip of water echoing from unseen depths. I flicked on my flashlight, its frail beam cutting through the gloom, and cautioned Sean against using his flash, fearing it might provoke unseen inhabitants. The cavern plunged deeper, its walls slick with moisture, glistening like the pulse of something ancient. Curiosity tugged me forward, but a sharp crunch underfoot halted me. The beam revealed a bone, a deer's leg, stripped bare, its stark whiteness jarring in the silent dark. Sean's hand clamped my arm, his whisper urgent as he nudged the light upward, where faint movement stirred in the depths, sending a jolt of dread through my core. A shadow darted across the beam, humanoid, fleeting, with a glimpse of pale flesh that vanished as quickly as it appeared. My voice trembled as I called out, the sound ricocheting off unseen walls, distorted, and hollow. Sean tugged at me, his fear palpable. But a reckless fascination held me, rooted in childhood tales of mountain folk, families driven to caves by poverty, living off the land's scraps. Those stories, once romantic, now fueled a dangerous curiosity, anchoring a thrill that warred with the growing terror in my gut. The sight of our tent, drenched in crimson, stopped my heart, a visceral warning that the wild we loved had turned against us, its beauty now a mask for something malevolent. Sean's sharp rebuke, "Don't be a moron," snapped me from my reverie, his grip hauling me back toward the cave's entrance. I shouted one last greeting, and the echo returned warped. A harsh command to get gone, laced with curses that evoked the desperate snarls of city addicts, not the noble hermits of my imagination. The illusion shattered, replaced by a stark realization. This wasn't adventure. It was peril. We fled the cave, hearts hammering, adrenaline coursing as we abandoned exploration for the day. The trek back to camp was tense. Our earlier chatter of mountain folk and feral wanderers now a grim undercurrent, each step heavy with the weight of what we'd glimpsed. By mid-afternoon, we reached our site, craving the comfort of routine. Me with my journal, Sean with his lens. But the sight awaiting us obliterated any hope of peace. Our tent stood defiled, drenched in crimson, like a slaughterhouse tableau frozen in time. The word "leave" scrawled in dripping letters that pierced my soul. Panic surged, conjuring images of blood and violence. The mountain's serenity, now a cruel facade. Closer inspection revealed it was paint, slathered viciously across the fabric, seeping inside to ruin our sleeping bags and gear. The bold, dripping command, "Leave," felt like a knife to the chest, its intent unmistakable, chilling me deeper than the cave's darkness. The air grew heavy, tainted with the acrid scent of paint, mingling with the lingering pine and earth. A juxtaposition that twisted the familiar into something sinister. We stood frozen, minds racing. Had the cave's shadow followed us? Was this the work of the figure we'd glimpsed? Or something worse? Our shelter was unsalvageable, the canvas torn and stained, our bedding defiled, with essentials spared, but no refuge for the night. We had no choice but to pack what we could and trek hours to our car. The journey was silent, each step weighted with dread. The forest's beauty, now a hollow backdrop to our fear. We drove to the nearest town, seeking sanctuary in a motel's sterile safety. The mountain's allure tainted by what we'd endured. As we collapsed in the motel room, the image of that crimson-soaked tent burned in my mind, a stark reminder that the wild we loved could harbor threats as unforgiving as its peaks. The bartender's knowing chuckle carried a warning, as if the mountains themselves had conspired to teach us a lesson we'd never unlearn. Settling into the motel, we sought solace in the bar downstairs, its dim lights and low hum a stark contrast to the wild we'd fled. Over lukewarm beers, we poured out our story to the bartender, a grizzled man with eyes that seemed to hold the mountain's secrets. His response was a chuckle, not of mockery, but of recognition, as if our tale was just another chapter in a story he'd heard too many times. He leaned in, his voice low, and revealed that our chosen site was no virgin wilderness. It was a haunt for meth cooks and their strung-out clients, trailers hidden among the peaks, their presence marked by sporadic gunfire that echoed through the valleys. His words landed like a stone in my gut, the reality of our brush with danger sinking in, reshaping the mountains into a place of hidden peril. He marveled at our singular encounter, noting that weekly shootings were common in that area, his amusement laced with a grim astonishment that we'd escaped unscathed. Whether he was serious or spinning a tale to spook city boys, I'll never know. But his words carved a permanent mark. The Sierra Nevada, once our sanctuary, now felt like a labyrinth where beauty masked treachery. We continued exploring in the years that followed, but we clung to marked trails, avoiding the uncharted corners where shadows and addicts lurked. The cave's echo haunted me, its darkness a living memory that stirred whenever I closed my eyes. That single word, leave, became an anchor, tying every thought of the wild to a fear that clings like paint on ruined canvas, impossible to erase. You thought you knew someone. You held their hand, shared your dreams, believed in a future together. But what happens when the person you love becomes the shadow in your nightmare, tearing apart everything you trusted? This is the story of my camping trip with Julia in Rhode Island, a vacation meant for love that turned into a chilling unraveling of truth, betrayal, and lingering fear. The autumn of 6 years ago painted my world in hues of possibility. Julia and I had been together for 8 months, a couple stitched together by shared laughter, late-night talks, and weekend escapes. Her smile could light up a room, but her eyes held secrets I was too blind to see. I thought I had found my forever. We met on OkCupid. Our first date, a nervous coffee shop chat that stretched into hours. By month 8, I was daydreaming about asking her to move in, maybe even a ring someday. Our relationship felt like a mountain, solid, unshakable, eternal. We loved our getaways, theme parks, city shopping trips, visits to my parents. They were our rhythm. But we'd never camped together. Julia, with her fierce independence, suggested Rhode Island. The idea sparked something in me, a chance to deepen our bond under the stars. Rhode Island's campgrounds promised serenity, a blend of seclusion and safety near the coast. We chose a site nestled in New England's heart, where crimson leaves danced in the crisp fall air. The 8-hour drive was a tapestry of her laughter and my terrible singing. The forested countryside unfolding like a painting. Julia marveled at the golden trees, her voice alive with wonder, and I felt my heart swell. This was it. I thought, our perfect escape. Our campsite was a dream, tucked at the edge of the grounds. It was a quiet haven. A forest loomed nearby, its shadows soft in the afternoon sun. A small pond shimmered a short walk away, its surface catching the light like a mirror. We pitched our tent, the fabric snapping in the breeze, and I couldn't stop grinning. This place was ours, a sanctuary for two. That first night, we cooked hot dogs over a crackling fire, the smoky scent mingling with the cool air. We made love in the tent, her warmth anchoring me. Later, we hiked through the forest, ending at the pond where moonlight rippled on the water. I held her close, her head on my shoulder, and whispered, "This is perfect." But perfection is fragile, and I didn't know how quickly it would shatter. Dawn broke with a scream that ripped through my dreams. Julia's voice, sharp and frantic, yanked me from sleep. I stumbled out of the tent, heart pounding, to a scene that felt like a punch to the gut. Our campsite was a wreck. The cooler we'd locked in the car was smashed open. Its contents, burgers, sausages, mac and cheese, strewn across the ground like the aftermath of a storm. Beer cans lay punctured, their contents soaking the earth, filling the air with a sour, yeasty stench. It looked like a war zone, not a vacation. I turned to the car, my pride, my new BMW, and my breath caught. The back windshield was shattered, jagged glass glinting in the morning light. Deep gouges scarred the paint, as if someone had clawed at it with feral rage. My baby, ruined. I fought the urge to scream. Then Julia pointed to a tree where a pile of shattered glass and plastic marked the remains of our phones. Our lifeline to the world. Gone. My mind reeled, trying to process the destruction. How had this happened? We'd slept soundly. The cooler was in the car, the phones in the tent. Something wasn't right, but I couldn't see it yet. Julia was hysterical, her voice trembling as she spun a tale of frat boys, drunk, rowdy, rampaging through our camp in the night. She swore she'd seen them when we arrived. A group of loud guys on the other side of the campground. Her words were sharp, convincing, but her eyes darted too quickly. I asked if she'd seen them attack, and she hesitated, mumbling about the darkness. My gut twisted, a nagging unease I couldn't name. We started cleaning, picking up ruined food and her clothes. Her underwear, disturbingly draped over bushes like a taunt. Who would do this? And why? Why would anyone stay in a place that felt like a crime scene? I wanted to leave, to pack up and drive away from this nightmare. Our vacation was tainted, our safety compromised. But Julia grabbed my hands, her eyes wide with a desperate intensity. We can't let them win, she pleaded, her voice shaking. Her words felt like a command, pulling me into her orbit. She insisted we could salvage the trip, buy a tarp for the car's windshield, replace supplies at the camp store. I stared at her, baffled. Who was this woman, so determined to stay where we'd been violated? A ranger arrived hours later, his face etched with boredom. He jotted down notes, promised to ask around, but dismissed it as just kids. Kids who'd cost me thousands in repairs. His nonchalance fueled my anger, but Julia clung to his words, pointing out the store nearby, urging me to stay. I agreed reluctantly, distracted by the wreckage of my car and a growing unease. Something about her urgency felt wrong, like a puzzle piece forced into the wrong spot. We walked to the camp store, my eyes scanning for the frat boys Julia described. I saw none. No rowdy groups, no one under 40 except us. The ranger waved, signaling he was doing his job, but it did little to ease my tension. At the store, a trivial argument erupted, something about hot dogs, of all things. Julia exploded, accusing me of never listening, never valuing her. Her rage was a storm, sudden and disorienting. I stood frozen as she stormed off, leaving me to pay for supplies. What was happening to us? Fear has a way of whispering truths you don't want to hear. Back at the campsite, I found Julia sobbing in the tent, rocking back and forth. My heart sank as I knelt beside her, her tears soaking my shirt. She choked out a story. 3 men had come while I was gone, threatening her, making lewd comments, kicking a dent into the car door. Her words painted a vivid horror, but they didn't add up. I checked the car. A fresh dent marred the door, but my mind snagged on her story. Why hadn't she run to me? Why stay here? I pressed for details, descriptions, anything to tell the police. Julia snapped, accusing me of calling her a liar, of not caring about her pain. Her anger was a blade, cutting through my concern. I hadn't doubted her, not consciously, but her reaction planted a seed of suspicion. I insisted we leave. The trip, now a nightmare. But Julia doubled down, her voice bright with forced enthusiasm. "We're having fun," she said, as if willing it to be true. Her desperation was a mask, hiding something darker. We sat by the campfire that night, the silence heavy with unspoken accusations. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. A splinter in my mind. The phones. The phones were in the tent. We'd fallen asleep, watching videos, their screens glowing beside us. How had vandals gotten them? I asked Julia, my voice calm but probing. Her face froze, her eyes flashing with something like fear or guilt. The air grew thick, the truth clawing its way to the surface. Truth doesn't just break, it shatters. Julia's reaction was explosive. She screamed, accusing me of betrayal, of thinking she was a liar. I hadn't said it, but she heard it in my silence. Her words tumbled out, frantic, defensive, and I saw it, the cracks in her story widening. I asked again, softly, if she knew anything about the vandalism. Stay with me, I thought. Let me understand. She broke, tears streaming as she confessed. Julia had done it all. The cooler, the car, the phones. She'd smashed our world to pieces. She believed I was going to leave her, that I loved my car more than her, that I was cheating. She thought if we were in danger, my instincts would kick in, binding me to her. Her logic was a twisted maze, born of paranoia and pain. I sat, stunned, as the woman I loved unraveled before me. There was no cheating, no betrayal, only her fears, spiraling into madness. How had I missed this? Her sobs echoed in the night, each one a reminder of the love I thought we shared. I was angry, then sad, then numb. She was breaking, and I couldn't fix her. I packed the car in silence, her pleas to stay falling on deaf ears. The campsite, once a haven, now felt like a trap. The drive home was a funeral for our love. 8 hours of silence. The broken windshield letting in the cold. Julia stared out the window, her face a mask of defeat. I dropped her at her apartment, promising to talk the next day. But I woke to find myself blocked. Social media, email, everything. Friends messaged, accusing me of hurting her, believing her twisted version of the truth. I was the villain in a story I didn't write. I cut ties, moved to a new state, started over. But the paranoia lingered. What if she finds me? Years later, a random car vandalism in a distant city sent chills down my spine. Was it her? I'll never know. Now, married to a woman I adore, with a child on the way, I've buried most of that fear. But camping? Never again. The word alone brings back the shattered glass, the dented car, the woman I loved who became my nightmare. Some scars fade, but they never truly heal. The gleaming barrel of a rusty shotgun caught the moonlight like a deadly promise. Its cold metal aimed right at our tents as a furious silhouette emerged from the shadows, shattering the night's fragile peace with a roar that echoed through my bones. In that instant, terror flooded every vein, my heart thundering as if it would burst from my chest, pulling me back to those reckless days when I was young and foolish, willing to risk everything just to catch a girl's eye. Amy, her name still stirs a may of warmth and dread in me, was the spark that ignited this nightmare. A story that started with naive enthusiasm, but spiraled into a harrowing chase through darkened woods, where fear wrapped around me like an unrelenting fog, leaving scars that time hasn't fully healed, even now, years later. The memory anchors me to that moment, a vivid reminder of how quickly adventure can turn to sheer horror, embedding a command in my mind: stay alert, or the darkness will swallow you whole. Looking back, I see myself as that wide-eyed guy in his early 20s, brimming with the kind of misplaced confidence that comes from too many movies and not enough real-world caution. I had done plenty of stupid things to impress girls before, jumping off cliffs into icy rivers, sneaking into forbidden parties. But nothing compared to this. Amy was different. She wasn't just pretty. She was passionate, with a fire in her eyes that made you believe in causes bigger than yourself. We'd met at a local environmental meetup, where she spoke animatedly about the dangers of fracking, how it poisoned water sources, cracked the earth like a fragile eggshell and threatened entire communities. I nodded along, pretending to be as informed as she was. But truthfully, my knowledge came from a quick Google search the night before, when she invited me to join a protest in a small village in Sussex. I saw it as my chance. "This is real action," she said, her voice laced with urgency as we browsed camping gear in a cramped outdoor store. I thought it'd be simple. Show up, chant some slogans, wave placards, and maybe earn a smile or two from her. But as she piled tents and sleeping bags into the cart, it dawned on me this was an overnight commitment, blocking the roads to halt the drilling rigs. My stomach twisted with a mix of excitement and unease. But I pushed it down, embedding the thought, this is your moment to prove you're worth it. The drive to Sussex the next morning felt electric, the countryside rolling by in a blur of green fields and quaint stone cottages, the air crisp with the promise of rebellion. About 100 of us gathered at the site, a diverse crowd of students, locals, and seasoned activists, all united against the fracking company's encroachment. We pitched our tents along the roadside, transforming the quiet lane into a makeshift fortress. The scent of fresh grass mingled with the faint tang of exhaust from occasional cars, and someone had rigged up a portable PA system, blasting Black Sabbath's heavy riffs to amp up the energy. Paranoid thrummed through the air, its lyrics oddly fitting as we prepared to stand our ground. Every time a vehicle approached, be it a local farmer's truck or a delivery van, we'd surge forward, linking arms in a human chain, chanting with raw determination, "No frack attack! Send the drillers back!" My throat grew hoarse from shouting, but the adrenaline kept me going. Glances stolen toward Amy as she led the charge, her hair whipping in the wind, her face alight with purpose. Between blockades, I fumbled with my phone, the signal weak and flickering, managing a quick text to my mom. "Staying out tonight, protesting for the environment. Don't worry." Little did I know how much worry was about to unfold. As the sun climbed higher, the group's energy shifted from setup to sustenance. We'd all brought snacks, crisps crunching under eager hands, chocolate bars melting in the warmth, apples shared around like tokens of camaraderie. But by midday, hunger gnawed at us collectively. Then, like a savior emerging from the crowd, one burly guy unveiled a massive barbecue grill, loaded with burgers and sausages that sizzled invitingly over the flames. The smoky aroma wafted through the camp, drawing everyone in, the meat charring unevenly, but tasting divine in our famished state. We sat in circles on the grass, plates balanced on knees, sharing stories of past protests. One woman recounted chaining herself to a tree in the rain. Another laughed about outrunning security guards at a corporate headquarters. Laughter echoed, bonding us in this temporary community. The warmth of the fire pit chasing away the chill of impending dusk. Amy and I had arrived a tad late, so our tents were pitched a bit isolated. Farther back from the main cluster, near a hedgerow that marked the edge of private land. I didn't think much of it then. The spot felt cozy, almost romantic under the fading light. Earlier, in the shop, I'd jokingly suggested buying one large tent to save money, my cheeks flushing when she declined with a playful eye roll. "Just kidding," I muttered. But inside, hope flickered. That evening, as we settled by our tents, Amy pulled a cooler from her bag, cracking open a beer and handing it to me. The cold bubbles fizzed on my tongue, easing the day's fatigue as we talked about her favorite comics, hence the Spider-Man t-shirt she'd wear to bed, my awkward attempts at activism, and the deeper reasons we were here. I'd even demonstrated how to secure the guy ropes, though she adjusted them with a knowing smile, making me feel both helpful and humbled. Night fell gradually, the camp's buzz softening into murmurs, and the occasional strum of a guitar. We crawled into our separate tents, the nylon fabric whispering against the ground, and I lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying the day in my mind. Sleep came fitfully, dreams fragmented by the distant hum of the PA. But then, a guttural shout pierced the darkness, yanking me from slumber, my pulse spiking as moonlight silhouetted a raging figure outside, shotgun waving like a harbinger of doom. Disoriented, my mind foggy from half-sleep, I couldn't decipher his words. They blurred into venomous snarls, but the weapon's outline was crystal clear, its barrel catching the pale glow like a fatal accusation. He was the farmer whose land we'd inadvertently claimed. That tiniest edge of property, now a battleground for his fury. Fear gripped me like icy talons, every sense overloading. The metallic scent of gun oil mixing with damp earth, my skin prickling in the chill, heart hammering so loud it drowned out reason. We had mere seconds to react. Scrambling from our tents in a haze of panic, me in just my underwear, exposed and vulnerable. Amy in her Spider-Man t-shirt, that, in any other scenario, might have sparked a light-hearted quiz on Marvel lore. But this was no game. The farmer's screams escalated, hollering curses that echoed through the night, amplifying the terror until it felt like the world was closing in. In that chaotic surge, instinct betrayed us. We bolted not toward the safety of the other protesters, their numbers a potential shield, but in the opposite direction, deeper into isolation. The road we'd blocked all day stretched between two distant villages, too far to reach on foot, especially with an armed pursuer on our heels. Darkness enveloped us, thick and oppressive, the kind that plays tricks on your eyes, turning every shadow into a lurking threat. We could hear his footsteps pounding behind, his shouts growing fainter, yet more menacing in their persistence. Off the road seemed our only salvation. Into the woods, where the dense foliage might hide us, though it could just as easily trap us both. I reached for Amy's hand, her fingers slipping into mine, clammy with shared dread, and we plunged into the underbrush, branches clawing at our skin like vengeful spirits. The fear deepened with each step, a trance-like loop of panic. Run faster. Don't look back. Survive this night. I regretted binge-watching the Blair Witch Project recently. Those fictional horrors now mirrored our reality. The twisted trees looming like ancient guardians, whispering warnings in the wind. The woods grew denser, forcing us to release hands. And suddenly, she vanished, swallowed by the gloom. Sensory overload hit hard, the sting of thorns tearing flesh, the musty decay of leaves underfoot. My breaths ragged and echoing, amplifying the isolation until loneliness felt as deadly as the shotgun. I pressed on blindly, nearly colliding with massive oak trees that seemed to multiply in the murk. Perhaps the same one circled in my disorientation. A root snagged my foot, sending me sprawling, pain exploding in my knee as it smashed into the unforgiving earth. Hands too slow to brace the fall, bruised and breathless. The cold seeped into my bones, embedding a command: give up, lie here, wait for dawn. But no, you must keep going. Cuts bloomed across my arms, warm blood trickling. But the real agony was the uncertainty. Where was Amy? Had I lost her forever in this labyrinth? Exhaustion tempted me to surrender, curling into the fetal position amid the damp soil, the night's chill gnawing like teeth. Then, a sharp cry sliced through the silence. Amy's voice, raw with terror, anchoring me back to action, pulling me toward the sound like an invisible thread. Adrenaline surged anew, propelling me forward despite the throbbing injuries, branches whipping my face in fresh assaults. I must have sustained more wounds, scrapes, bruises that would purple by morning. But pain blurred into background noise, bursting into a small clearing. I spotted her, backed against a gnarled tree, the farmer towering over her, shotgun in hand. He hadn't aimed it directly at her. A reluctant courtesy, perhaps, but the threat loomed large, his posture radiating menace. He hadn't noticed me yet, his focus locked on Amy. And I froze, mind racing. Attack him? No. He knew these woods intimately, could navigate back to the road with ease. Violence wasn't the answer. Words might be. Stepping forward, voice quivering but steady. I pleaded, "We didn't mean to trespass on your land. It was a mistake. We won't do it again. We're lost out here, completely turned around," taking full blame to shield her. It was all my idea to join this protest. Punish me if you must. But let Amy go. She's innocent in this. The words hung in the air. A desperate gamble, hoping to disarm him. Wrongfoot his anger enough to spare us harm. Silence stretched, taut as a bowstring, my heart pounding in the void. Then, improbably, laughter erupted from him, deep, belly shaking, shattering the tension like glass. Relief crashed over me in waves, mingled with bewilderment, the night's horrors shifting into surreal absurdity. He lowered the shotgun, revealing later through his wife that it was unloaded, rusted to uselessness, more prop than peril. He'd been disoriented in the chase, too. The woods playing tricks on everyone. The protest camp's noise, chants, music served as a guide now, drawing us back without the frenzy. As we walked, conversation thawed. We explained the fracking dangers, how it could ruin the soil he farmed, poison the water his family drank. Surprisingly, he listened, nodding thoughtfully, even accepting leaflets from Amy once she steadied herself, though she had none on her at the moment. A promise for later. He caught my lie about it being my idea. Amy had been the instigator, but deemed it a noble fib, chuckling as he invited us to his farmhouse for tea. The warm brew steamed in mugs, chasing away the chill. The kitchen's glow, a stark contrast to the wood's terror. In the aftermath, that night wove an unbreakable thread between Amy and me. I never got the date I'd hoped for. Our chemistry stayed platonic, but we became the closest of friends, sharing inside jokes about shotgun diplomacy and Blair Witch vibes. There's an anchoring truth in shared trauma, facing the barrel of what seems like certain death binds souls. Even if romance fades, it brings people together in ways superficial connections can't, forging bonds from fear's forge. I never returned to the protest, life pulling me elsewhere. But curiosity lingers. What became of it? Did they halt the fracking? Did our stand ripple outward? The memory remains, a nested tale of folly and fortune, reminding me how one impulsive night can etch eternal lessons in the soul. My name is Anton, and I hail from Germany. If my English comes across a bit rough around the edges, please bear with me. I've pieced it together, mostly from endless hours glued to American television series and a handful of visits to your vast country, all through self-study, without formal classes. As someone deeply passionate about adventure and hiking, I've dedicated a significant portion of my life to wandering the untamed expanses of Europe, pitching tents in secluded valleys and scaling peaks that demand every ounce of endurance, from the misty highlands of Scotland to the sun-drenched trails of the Italian Alps. If a location held any allure or challenge, I've made it my mission to conquer it, absorbing the raw energy of nature in its purest forms. Yet, despite these extensive explorations, the broader world outside Europe's borders had remained an elusive frontier, a tantalizing unknown that beckoned with stories of exotic dangers and breathtaking vistas. For what felt like an eternity, spanning my 20s and into my 30s, I nurtured this profound longing to set foot in the fabled Appalachia, a region immortalized in countless tales of spine-tingling horror and atmospheric escapades that I'd encountered in books, movies, and online forums. The very essence of it captivated me. Those endless ridges shrouded in fog, forests whispering secrets of bygone eras, and an undercurrent of mystery that seemed to pulse like a living entity. As a dedicated solo hiker, I relish the isolation, deliberately testing my limits by venturing into the wilderness unaccompanied, where self-reliance becomes not just a skill, but a lifeline. This preference for solitude has always aligned perfectly with my inherently reclusive personality. I find solace in the quiet companionship of my own thoughts amid nature's grandeur. Throughout my myriad journeys across Europe, I've faced only a scattering of mildly disconcerting episodes. Perhaps a sudden storm forcing an impromptu shelter, or a fleeting encounter with wildlife that quickened my pulse but never truly endangered me. Buoyed by this history of relative safety, I made what I now recognize as a gravely misguided decision: to undertake a solitary expedition along the Appalachian Trail during the balmy summer of 2014. It marked my inaugural foray into the United States, a land I'd romanticized through media and conversations, and I arrived with wide-eyed enthusiasm, first bunking with a group of online acquaintances I'd cultivated over years of virtual exchanges, sharing meals and anecdotes that only heightened my anticipation. After those initial days of camaraderie, I secured a reliable rental car and navigated to the trail's starting point, the threshold of what I envisioned as a transformative odyssey. My friends, ever the worriers, had extracted a solemn vow from me to adhere strictly to the designated paths, their concerns amplified by tales of hikers vanishing or succumbing to the trail's unforgiving whims when straying alone. Outwardly, I nodded in agreement, but inwardly, a rebellious spark ignited. I resolved to surrender to the unpredictable currents of adventure, allowing intuition to dictate my direction for the opening leg of the journey. Spanning 1 or 2 sun-soaked days, I complied, following the blazed markers that guided countless others before me, exchanging brief nods with passing trekkers who faded like mirages in the distance. However, the call of the unexplored proved irresistible. With a wealth of exploratory expertise amassed over decades, skills in orienteering, map reading, and instinctive navigation, maintaining awareness of my position presented no genuine hurdle. I could always backtrack if necessity arose, compelled by an almost magnetic attraction. I deviated from the beaten path, plunging into a sector that resonated with an indefinable allure. The flora here dwarfed anything familiar from my homeland. Colossal trees soaring skyward like sentinels from a primordial age, their bark etched with the scars of centuries, forming a verdant cathedral that filtered sunlight into dappled patterns on the forest floor. I paused frequently, overwhelmed by the sheer majesty enveloping me, the air thick with the scent of pine and earth, a symphony of subtle sounds, leaves murmuring in the breeze, distant streams gurgling, that stirred a profound sense of connection to something ancient and untamed. As twilight descended that pivotal evening, casting elongated shadows that seemed to reach out like grasping fingers, I selected a picturesque spot to establish camp, erecting my tent adjacent to a diminutive pond whose still waters captured the waning light in a mesmerizing display of rippling hues. The splendor of this American backcountry robbed me of words. I stood transfixed, inhaling the crisp, invigorating air, basking in the profound hush that blanketed the landscape, a tranquility so absolute it felt like stepping into another realm, in contrast to Germany's captivating scenery, its orderly meadows and majestic Bavarian peaks. This slice of Appalachia exuded a singular uniqueness, an almost ethereal quality that left me awestruck, my heart swelling with the thrill of discovery. I lingered outdoors, reclining against a moss-covered log, tracing constellations emerging in the indigo sky, each star a beacon of infinite possibility, until weariness compelled me to retreat into the tent's confines, where sleep enveloped me like a gentle shroud. The repose was short-lived. In the dead of night, I snapped awake to auditory intrusions that shattered the serenity, eerie howls reverberating through the canopy, primal and insistent, instilling an immediate surge of unease that prickled my skin. My initial assumption leaned toward a wolf pack, their vocalizations a territorial assertion echoing across the ridges, a reminder of the wild's inherent perils. Lacking a firearm, prohibited for a vacationing German in the States, I fumbled for my hunting knife, its cold steel a meager comfort as I lay immobilized within the tent. Every sense heightened, attuned to the encroaching symphony of dread. The howls evolved insidiously, morphing from bestial utterances into discernible human timbres, a transition that amplified my alarm tenfold. At the outset, their utterances blurred into incomprehensible garble, perhaps mere figments of a sleep-addled mind. But clarity soon emerged, crystallizing into a chilling incantation that looped relentlessly. If you leave, you'll die. If you leave, you'll die. The words repeated like a mantra, embedding themselves in my consciousness, a trance-inducing cycle that drew me into a vortex of escalating terror, where rational thought fragmented under the weight of impending doom. Convinced of their awareness of my presence, their proximity too deliberate to be coincidental, I summoned a quavering voice to challenge them. "Leave where?" The retort arrived promptly, laced with menace. "Leave the tent. If you leave the tent, you will die." Pulse thundering in my ears, I probed deeper. "Will you kill me?" An oppressive silence ensued, fractured only by a renewed howl that sliced through the night like a blade, succeeded by the inexorable refrain, "If you leave, you'll die." Then came the footsteps, methodical, encircling patrols that compressed the air around me, the ground vibrating subtly with each approach, evoking images of predators closing in on prey. Terror seized me in a vice grip, a visceral assault far surpassing any prior brushes with adversity in my lone wanderings. Could this truly mark my demise? Stranded in an alien expanse, my existence snuffed out by enigmatic figures from a nation I'd long revered for its pioneering ethos. A slight adjustment in my posture elicited a sharp rebuke. "Do not come out." Heeding the embedded command, I intensified my hold on the knife, mirroring the fear's unyielding clasp on my psyche. Additional footfalls materialized, accelerating into a sprint, accompanied by outbursts and a tumultuous uproar that, while seemingly peripheral to my predicament, intensified the sensory overload, the acrid tang of fear sweat mingling with the earthy dampness. My breaths shallow and ragged. A proximate voice reiterated the directive to remain ensconced, its authority compelling obedience amid the chaos, recalling the fire I'd nurtured earlier in a shallow pit, now reduced to glowing coals. I perceived its resurgence through the tent's opaque barrier, the flames leaping anew, kindled by invisible agents, their luminescence casting grotesque silhouettes that danced mockingly. A fresh wave of panic crested. What if their intent was incineration, transforming my refuge into an inferno? Yet, the blaze maintained a prudent separation, discernible even in the diffused glow, averting immediate catastrophe. I stifled an emergent cry as a gunshot erupted, crisp and explosive, shattering the nocturnal veil, swiftly trailed by a second report that echoed interminably. The sentinel voice reaffirmed its mandate, anchoring my resolve to immobility. Contemplations of rebellion surfaced, erupting forth, blade wielded in defiance, engaging in a primal struggle for existence. But to what avail, when their assurances hinged on confinement? Thus, I persisted in seclusion, as subsequent detonations, two more piercing blasts, intermingled with unsettling mirth and whoops, suggesting a perverse revelry amid potential carnage. The perpetrator's motives eluded me. What savagery transpired beyond my sight? And to what extent did it imperil me directly? My sole certainty resided in their persistent injunctions to linger within the tent's embrace. As the protracted, harrowing vigil wore on, the fire dwindled once more, its extinguishment granting a modicum of respite, alleviating the specter of fiery demise at the hands of phantoms. Miraculously, exhaustion prevailed, lulling me into fitful oblivion despite the adrenaline's torrent. Dawn's advent roused me, sunlight infiltrating the enclosure like probing tendrils, momentarily amnesiac. The prior night's horrors receded, supplanted by a pressing biological imperative initiating the zipper's descent. Recollection surged back, halting my motion. I vocalized a tentative inquiry, greeted by vacancy, pausing, attuning to the void. Knife reaffirmed in grasp. I ventured forth. The vista betrayed minimal traces of the pandemonium. No debris or overt vestiges, barring compressed foliage indicative of frenzied traversal, positioned adjacent to the ashen pit. However, rested a six-pack of beer, immaculate and anomalous, an artifact absent upon my retirement. Perplexed and disquieted, I abstained from consumption, abandoning it in situ. Within 48 hours, I extricated myself from that Appalachian enclave, my aspirational sojourn truncated irrevocably. Subsequent traversals of the trail have transpired, invariably in company and confined to sanctioned routes. Inquiries posed to diverse interlocutors, companions, experts. Indigenous denizens yield no definitive elucidations. Conjecture abounds, yet verity evades. I endeavor to frame it as a sadistic jest, a malicious diversion at my expenditure, though conviction wavers. Lore abounds of anomalous phenomena along the Appalachian Trail, enigmatic disappearances, spectral manifestations, encounters defying logic. Germany's folklore mirrors elements thereof, with its lore of enchanted groves and ethereal nomads, albeit subdued in intensity. Appalachia embodies a duality, resplendent allure entwined with spectral peril and latent hazards. Inevitably, I'll return, magnetized by its enigma, and on each incursion into that extraordinary domain, I'll intone a fervent supplication, beseeching evasion of those spectral men and their ominous legacy.